I got a girlfriend and my gay best friend stopped talking to me. I'm a bisexual guy and my friend Steve, whom I've known for 10 plus years, is gay. We come from conservative families, so we didn't even know the concept of queerness when we were young. Steve and I were inseparable throughout our teenage years and people joke that we were like brothers. We managed to get into the same college and move to a big city when we were 17 years old. This exposed us to a completely different world and Steve realized that he was gay. I realized that I too was attracted to men. Not knowing anything about the queer stuff. I thought I was gay too. Steve and I found other queer people and our new friend circle was made of gay people. We couldn't tell our families that we were queer, so Steve and I could only depend on each other. We started dating men, but our initial relationships weren't very serious. After my first gay relationship ended, I realized that I was attracted to both men and women. I was bisexual. I told this to my group of queer friends who said that I was going through a phase, that years of brainwashing were the reason I was attracted to women, and that I would get over it, and they told me that I was gay. Steve refused to accept that I was bisexual and told me that bisexuality wasn't real. I tried to convince him, but he refused to accept that I wasn't gay. We were roommates and this started causing a lot of tension between us. I decided to let it go and stop trying to convince him. Things went back to normal and I had 2 more gay relationships. Steve got into a serious relationship with a senior. Our families didn't know anything about this. Then I met my current girlfriend, Mary, at a bar. Mary and I hit off immediately. We exchanged numbers and kept talking for a week before I invited her to our flat. I introduced her to Steve and Mary and I went into my room. When she was leaving, I noticed that Steve was glaring at her. I didn't think much about this. Mary and I started meeting more often and Steve refused to talk to her. I decided to ask him about it and he told me that Mary was not good for me and asked me why I was being so close to a woman. I asked him what he meant by that and he just stormed off. Steve started fighting me about trivial things that didn't matter before. Mary and I made our relationship official a few weeks later and I posted about it in my story. When I got back to our flat, Steve and a few friends were waiting for me. Steve started shouting at me, asking how I would betray him. He told me that I turned my back on him and he called Mary a witch. I reminded him that I was bisexual and assured him that I wasn't leaving him. Our friends took Steve's side and asked me why I started dating a woman. They agreed with Steve that Mary bewitched me. I left our flat and when I came back later, Steve refused to talk to me and told me that he wouldn't talk to me as long as I was in a relationship with Mary. I hoped that this would blow over, but Steve refused to talk to me. A month later I really like Mary and I don't want to end our relationship, but Steve needs my support and nobody back home knows anything about us being queer. We would most probably be disowned if they found out. How do I handle this situation? Update, I decided to tell Mary about Steve not talking to me. She was extremely supportive and told me that she'd support me in anything I decided to do. Some people asked if Mary knew about my gay relationships. I told her about my earlier relationships and me being bisexual on our first date and she was okay with it. I did not know biphobia was a thing until the comments told me about it yesterday. I assumed that everyone in the LGBT community supported each other and I thought I was doing something wrong as many people suggested. I decided to cut off my toxic friend circle and I won't be talking to them in the future. A comment about the relationship between Steve and me being codependent made me rethink our friendship. I realized that we were depending on each other too much. We were the only connection to home left for each other and this made us way too dependent on each other. I felt like we needed space from each other. I decided to move out and when I told Steve about this, he started crying and begged me not to leave. He said he would talk to me and that he would tolerate Mary. I told him that we were being codependent and he wouldn't need to tolerate me if he didn't like my choices. I told him that I would be there for him when he decided to come out and that he could always count on my support. Steve kept crying, but I told him my decision was final. I went back to my room, called Mary, and started crying. I did not want to leave my friend alone. She listened to what I had to say and reassured me. I had to look for a new place to live, but Mary called me a few hours later and told me that one of her friends had a room and that I could move in with him. I thanked her for her help. Steve's friends started calling and yelling at me for abandoning them for a girl. They accused me of being a bad friend and accused Mary of breaking up our friendship. When I called Mary later, she told me that my friends were calling her and shouting at her for breaking up my friendship. I apologized, but she was very understanding and told me that she would be there for me if I needed her. Hearing her say that made me feel better. I'm moving out, putting some distance between Steve and me, and blocking my earlier friends. This ordeal has made me understand that I made the right decision by sticking with Mary, and I appreciate her way more now. A lot of you mentioned that Steve might have feelings for me. I've only ever thought of him as a friend, and I might have given it a shot before, but now I'm afraid of a romantic relationship with him. Thank you to all the people who gave me advice and helped me decide.